true calm does not arrive through control. It appears when we stop forcing life to fit our expectations. It's the softness that enters when we finally allow things to be as they are. Take a deep breath now. Feel the cool air entering, the warmth leaving. Find a position that feels like surrender, your body supported, your hands unclenched, your jaw at rest. The stories you'll hear tonight are not steps to follow. They are quiet companions, sitting beside you as the mind learns to loosen its grip. If you feel called, share what you're feeling in this moment or what you hope these stories might help you release. Maybe a burden, a fear, or simply the need to understand. Let each breath be a gesture of release. There is no race to peace. You are already arriving. Now let the story begin. In the heart of a wealthy city, wrapped in silk and stone, lived a man who had everything. Gold draped his halls. Ivory framed his mirrors. Incense curled in soft waves from brass burners that never cooled. His name was Viran. He owned land, warehouses, servants, even ships that crossed oceans bearing his name on their sails. And yet, he could not sleep. Each night, he turned beneath embroidered sheets, his mind counting coins like sheep. Each morning, he awoke with new orders, new demands, new acquisitions. He kept building, kept gathering, but inside there was a tightness he could not name. One day, as he stepped from his carriage, he noticed a beggar sitting beside the temple gate. The beggar's robe was faded and torn. His alms bowl was empty, but his eyes were calm, still as a pond before dawn. Viran glanced at him and scoffed. "If I had nothing," he said, "I would not smile." The beggar bowed. "If you truly had nothing," he said, "you might finally know peace." The words followed Viran like a shadow. He tried to forget them, tried to drown them in wine, in silk, in celebration. But they clung like a thread caught in the lining of his soul. The next morning, he returned to the temple. The beggar was still there, eyes closed, back straight, breath soft. "How do you do this?" Viran asked. "You have no food, no roof, no gold, and yet you sit like you own the world." The beggar opened his eyes. "I do not own the world," he said, "but the world no longer owns me." Viran stared. Something inside him cracked. That day he left behind his ring. The next, his jeweled belt. Then quietly, he began walking to the temple each morning, leaving behind one possession at a time. No ceremony, no announcement, just letting go, piece by piece. The beggar never asked, never praised. He simply shared his seat on the stone step. Weeks passed. One morning, Viran arrived barefoot. No rings, no silks, no guards, only his breath and the ache in his knees. He sat beside the beggar, closed his eyes, and for the first time in years, he felt nothing pulling at him. No hunger for more, no fear of losing, no need to be seen, just stillness. He opened his eyes. "Have I become poor?" he asked. The beggar smiled. "No," he said softly. "You've become free." This is the story of true wealth, the kind that doesn't glitter, but glows from within. Commentary: wealth is not evil, it is neutral. Like a knife, it can feed or wound. Like fire, it can warm or consume. The Buddha taught that attachment, not possession, is the root of suffering. You can have little and still cling. You can have much and still be free. The beggar was not rich in gold, but he had space. He had his breath, his presence, his peace. He was not owned by anything, not even his own suffering. The parable reminds us, you are not your bank balance, not your reputation, not your wardrobe or your followers. You are the one who notices, the one who breathes, the one who can let go. Letting go is not about loss. It is about choice. When you no longer need a thing to feel complete, you are free to enjoy it or leave it without fear. That is the highest wealth. There's a Zen proverb, when I had nothing, I had everything. It does not mean destitution. It means this: when your hands are not full of fear and control, they are finally open to life. So whether you own much or little, ask yourself, do these things serve me? Or do I serve them? If they crumble, do I crumble too? Or am I the same presence, the same breath, the same open sky? Regardless, true wealth is not counted. It is felt. It is the spaciousness of a mind that can sit still beside a bowl, empty or full, and smile just the same. Be that kind of rich. There was once a mirror. Polished and flawless, it reflected everything. The mountain at dawn, the child's laugh, the tired lines on an old woman's face. It made no judgment. It added nothing. It simply showed the truth. But slowly, over time, dust began to settle on the mirror. Just a little each day. First the soft film of daily life, breath, skin, wind. Then more, smoke from cooking fires, damp from morning rain. The mirror was not broken, but what it showed became dull, distorted, not because it had changed, but because the dust had gathered. One day, someone passed by and frowned. "This mirror is useless," they said. "It doesn't reflect anything clearly." Another agreed. "It must be flawed." But then an old caretaker stepped forward. She took a cloth, wiped once, twice, 3 times, and beneath her hand, the shine returned, not because she added anything, but because she removed what didn't belong. This is the story of the mind, not just in Buddhism, in life. Your mind is a mirror, naturally clear, naturally reflective. It was never meant to cling, or distort, or judge. It was meant to see. But like the mirror, it gathers dust, thoughts, memories, opinions, wounds, desires, stories. Each one a fine layer, each one settling so softly that you hardly notice, until one day, you no longer see clearly. You don't see the other person, you see your story about them. You don't feel this moment, you feel your expectations. You don't hear the sound of the bell, you hear your evaluation of its pitch, not because you are broken, but because there's dust. And dust can be wiped away. In the Zen tradition, this teaching is central. A monk once asked the master, "What is enlightenment?" The master picked up a cloth and said, "Wipe your mirror." You don't have to become something new. You don't have to add insight or brilliance. You don't have to fix yourself. You only have to clear the dust, not all at once, not perfectly, just honestly and patiently. Meditation is not performance. It is polishing. Each breath, a gentle wipe. Each moment of awareness, a cloth across the surface. Not dramatic, not flashy, but steady. And over time, things begin to gleam. One day you sit, you feel anxious, you name it. Dust. You return to the breath. Another thought, dust. You return again and again. And after many days or months or years, you look up and realize the world is more beautiful, not because it changed, but because now you're seeing it. There's a line in the Platform Sutra. Our nature is originally pure. It is because of false thoughts that we cannot realize it. This is not a scolding. It is an invitation. It says, your clarity is still there. Don't give up. Just wipe gently. Sometimes we think dust is who we are. I am angry. I am anxious. I am not enough. But you are not the dust. You are the mirror beneath it, always capable of reflecting light. Even anger, when seen clearly, becomes insight. Even sorrow, when held with presence, becomes compassion. Even fear, when understood, becomes freedom. Because when the mirror clears, everything reveals its true shape. Commentary. The mirror and the dust is not just a metaphor, it is a daily practice. It teaches us that effort matters, that clarity is not permanent, but neither is confusion. That we don't need to judge the dust, just see it and wipe. You may sit today and feel cloudy. Thoughts may swirl, but every moment you stay, every time you bring your hand to the surface of your own experience, you are remembering, you are seeing, you are restoring the mirror. In a monastery garden, a novice once asked his teacher, "How do I become wise?" The teacher handed him a cloth and pointed to the windows. "Start here," he said. And so the novice began. And as the glass cleared, so did his mind. The world doesn't need you to shine brighter. It needs you to see clearly. And the first step is this. Pause. Look at your thoughts. Smile at them. And then wipe gently, without shame. Because beneath it all, you were always the mirror. In the 17th century, Japan was changing. Temples were quiet. Monks walked with their hands folded inside sleeves, heads bowed against the cold wind of politics, poverty, and war. But in Kyoto, a monk named Tetsugen Doko had a dream: to bring the sutras, the sacred texts of the Buddha, to the people. Not locked away in elite monasteries, not spoken only in the high Chinese script of scholars, but printed in Japanese, on paper, so the common farmer, the weaver, the rice merchant, and the child sweeping the temple steps could read the Buddha's words. He would print them, all of them, in woodblock form, an enormous undertaking. Tetsugen began with nothing, no paper, no ink, no press, no woodblocks, just a robe, a bowl, and a vow. So he traveled the countryside, bowl in hand, asking for donations, not for himself, but for the words of the Dharma. At first, people were skeptical. A monk with no monastery, a printing press as a spiritual act. But Tetsugen spoke with quiet conviction. He did not pressure. He did not persuade. He simply bowed and spoke of a dream where truth could be read by all. And slowly, the donations came. Coins, rice, a silver hairpin from a widow, a child's carved flute, one woman brought a single perfect sheet of handmade paper and said, "I cannot read, but may this help someone who can." Years passed. Tetsugen traveled through mountain towns and port cities. He walked in sun, in snow, in silence. The money piled up, not in bags, but in faith, until finally, he had enough. Enough for paper, ink, carvers, labor. The work could begin, but then disaster struck. The Uji River flooded. A great famine swept across the land. Families went hungry. Children cried into bowls of water. And Tetsugen looked at the money he had gathered. He did not hesitate. He gave every coin to relief. Food was bought, homes were rebuilt, the suffering eased, and the printing dream disappeared for a time. When the crisis passed, Tetsugen began again. From zero, bowl in hand, dust on his feet. The same quiet voice, the same calm vow. This time, people gave more quickly. They remembered, they trusted. He gathered enough once more. The press was readied, woodblocks carved. Then, epidemic. A plague swept through Kyoto. The poor collapsed in alleys. Temples turned into infirmaries. And once again, Tetsugen gave all the money away. The third time, he began again. Older now, slower, but steady. His vow never cracked, and after many years, the sutras were finally printed in 7,000 woodblocks, hand-carved and inked with devotion. The first complete Japanese printing of the Buddhist canon. Even today, the blocks are preserved at Obaku Monastery in Kyoto, a monument to patience, to persistence, to presence. But ask a Zen master about Tetsugen's sutras, and they will smile and say, yes, he printed 3 editions, but the first 2 are the most beautiful. Commentary. Zen is not impressed by grand gestures, it is moved by quiet truth. Tetsugen's vow was not to ink, not to paper, but to service. And so, when suffering appeared, he did not cling to his dream. He let it go, not out of failure, but out of deeper practice. The first 2 editions were never printed, but they were lived. Printed in rice, in shelter, in the body of a starving child who lived because of his decision. Printed in the woman who kept her husband another year because Tetsugen paid for medicine instead of woodblocks. Printed in the hearts of strangers who saw that the Dharma is not words, but action. The 3rd edition, that was just the form. The content had already been carved in compassion. Tetsugen teaches us, your vow is not what you say when it's easy. It's what you do when it costs you. And in those moments, when your deepest aspiration must bend to the needs of others, that is the real test of the way. We all have sutras we want to print, projects, dreams, a book, a vision, a calling. And often the world interrupts, crisis, illness, family. But Zen does not see this as failure. It sees it as opportunity to offer, to release, to serve something greater than the plan. And when the time is right, you return, you begin again. Because nothing is lost. Each pause is part of the rhythm. Each surrender shapes the heart. Each detour deepens the vow. There is no need to rush. If the heart remains clear, even a delay becomes Dharma. Even an interruption becomes a verse. Even a famine becomes a teaching. Tetsugen walked the mountains for decades, but the greatest thing he carried was patience, a faith that giving is not giving up, and that sometimes the invisible sutras are the ones that save us most. As we continue our journey through the wisdom of Zen Buddhism, let us turn to a tale about recognition and the true nature of worth. This is the next story. Long ago, in a kingdom ringed by mountains and temples, a mighty king ruled from a palace of stone and gold. He was feared by his enemies, praised by poets, and followed by thousands. His armies stretched across the land. His wealth filled entire chambers, and his commands echoed through cities like thunder. But still, he was restless. Victory brought no peace. Praise faded quickly. Even sleep, wrapped in silk and guarded by soldiers, felt hollow. And so one morning, while gazing out across his kingdom from a marble balcony, the king spoke aloud. "Who in this world is greater than I?" A servant, sweeping quietly nearby, paused. "There is one," he said softly, eyes downcast. The king turned sharply. "Who?" "A sage," said the servant. "He lives alone in the forest, wears no crown, owns no gold. But they say he holds more peace in his silence than all your generals in battle." The king laughed. "A beggar in the woods, greater than me?" But something in the servant's voice lingered. And later that night, when the court had gone quiet, the king summoned his best horse and rode out alone, disguised in simple robes, his face shadowed by the hood of a traveler. He rode for 2 days, through thick jungle, across rivers, past farmers and monks and children who did not bow. Finally, at the edge of a still grove, he saw a small hut beneath a Bodhi tree, and outside it, seated cross-legged on a flat stone, was the sage. No guards, no roof over his head, no possessions, just stillness and eyes that did not flicker when the king approached. "You are the one they speak of?" the king asked. The sage nodded once. "I am one, of many." The king studied him. "You have no palace, no army, no throne, and yet people speak your name in reverence. Why?" The sage said nothing. The silence stretched, long enough for the king to feel his own voice echo. Finally, the sage opened his palm and motioned for the king to sit. The king hesitated, then obeyed. They sat together under the tree, as the wind moved gently through the leaves. No words, no commands, just presence. After a long while, the king said, "You are not afraid of me." "I see no king," said the sage, "only a man with questions." The king frowned. "I have conquered lands, broken enemies, shaped history. You think I have questions?" The sage met his eyes. "Then why are you here?" The king opened his mouth, closed it, and looked away. Because beneath the silk, beneath the crowns, beneath the noise, he had come not to test the sage, but to understand something he could not command. Finally, he asked, "Why do people follow you?" "I do not ask them to." "Then why do they listen?" The sage picked up a small stone from the earth, rolled it in his fingers. "They listen," he said, "because I have no need for them to." The king blinked. "I lead armies, command cities, hold power over life and death, but still I'm not content." The sage nodded. because you mistake fear for respect, obedience for love, wealth for worth. The king stiffened. Are you saying I am not powerful? I am saying, the sage said gently, that true power does not cling, it does not shout, it does not fear being forgotten. They sat again in silence. The wind stirred the sage's robe. The king looked down at his hands. I have everything, he said, but still I feel empty. The sage smiled. Then you are ready. Ready for what? To lead without needing to be above. That evening, the king returned to his palace. No fanfare, no declaration, but something had changed. He began to listen more, to speak less, to ask questions instead of giving orders. His advisors whispered about his visits to temples, his long walks alone, his sudden interest in sitting beneath trees without speaking. And when his generals asked, "Who taught you this?" he said simply, "A man with nothing, who showed me everything." Years later, when the sage passed into silence beneath the same Bodhi tree, the king declared a day of stillness across the land. No work, no speech, just listening. And in time, his own rule became a story of its own, not because he expanded borders, but because he stopped needing to, not because he gained more, but because he learned to let go. And the story of the king and the sage spread like the breeze that once moved through the forest leaves. A reminder that the crown is not the source of power, wisdom is, and the one who does not seek to rule is often the one most worthy to lead. There was once a monastery nestled in the cliffs above a wide, mist-covered valley. Travelers came from all over the land, seeking wisdom from the old abbot who lived at its heart. But no one ever entered without first passing through the gate of questions. It was a tall wooden door, weathered by time, bound in iron, and it never seemed to open, no matter how many times pilgrims knocked. Instead, beside the gate stood a young monk with a calm face and a single instruction. If you wish to pass, you must answer, what keeps you from entering? Some said, my sins. Others said, I'm not ready. One said, I'm too angry. Another said, I'm still seeking. To each answer, the monk bowed and said, return when you are not. And so the pilgrims would leave, some frustrated, some weeping, some silent. One day, a weathered traveller approached. She was older than most. Her robes were plain, her eyes clear. She stood before the gate and read the words carved above, liberation is here. Then she looked at the gate and realized there was no lock, no bolt, no bar, just a handle. She turned it. The door opened and she walked through. The monk beside the gate only smiled, because the lesson had never been in the answer. It had been in the assumption. This is the story of liberation, not as something earned, but as something already available, once illusion falls away. Commentary. Most of us believe the door is locked, that we must be perfect first, clean first, worthy first, empty of anger or sadness or self-doubt. But the Dharma does not wait for your perfection, it waits for your presence. The Buddha did not say, you must transcend before you begin. He said, see clearly. And in seeing, freedom unfolds. The gate of questions was never locked, but the mind said it was, because it clings to a self-image that believes, I am not there yet. I am not enough. I am still broken. But brokenness too is part of the path, and sometimes it is the crack that lets the light through. Liberation is not far. It is not elsewhere. It is not earned. It is the moment you stop demanding anything of the moment and simply turn the handle. The traveler who opened the gate was not special. She had simply grown tired of pretending the barrier was real. She saw the door for what it was, just a door, and walked forward. The monks say the abbot greeted her without words, only a bow, because no celebration is needed for one who sees the obvious. This story is often told to new students when they first enter training. Some smile, some frown, but a few immediately stand up and walk to the edge of the room to check if the door is locked. And when it opens easily, you can always hear the soft laughter of awakening. So if you find yourself waiting for permission, waiting for a sign, waiting to be good enough to begin, ask, what if the door was never locked? What if I only needed to reach for it? And if your hand trembles, that's all right. Just turn the handle. The Dharma is not waiting behind it. The Dharma is the act of reaching. She was just the cleaning woman. That's what most called her. Not nun, not practitioner, not devotee, just the woman who swept the temple. She arrived before sunrise, her hair tied back in a grey knot, her robes plain and faded, her broom worn thin at the bristles. She did not chant, did not preach, did not study sutras in the main hall. She swept the stone walkways, the meditation hall. The steps no one noticed were dusty until they were clean. And when she swept, she smiled. Some of the younger monks whispered, she's not really practicing. She doesn't even sit in the morning zazen. She just does chores. But she never responded. She bowed to them anyway. Years passed. One by one, the monks left for higher temples, deeper study, more advanced masters. But she remained, still sweeping, still silent, still smiling. One spring morning, the abbot called for an assembly. The monks gathered, some sitting in strict posture, others blinking away sleep. The abbot raised his voice gently. I have been observing this temple for many years, he said. And in all this time, only one among you has reached the heart of the Dharma. Heads turned. The scholars straightened their backs. The meditation leaders adjusted their robes. The younger monks held their breath. And then the abbot looked to her, the woman with the broom. She was in the corner, brushing dust from the edge of a wooden beam. She paused, looked up, and smiled. A silence fell over the room. Then whispers. But she never studied the Diamond Sutra. She never debates koans. She doesn't even recite the Heart Sutra. The abbot turned to them and said, she lives it. This is the story of embodied wisdom, the kind that doesn't speak loudly, but moves like breath through a humble act. Commentary. There is a great misunderstanding in spiritual life, that awakening comes only through texts, or teachers, or temples. But the Buddha taught in forests. He sat beneath trees. He pointed to rivers and mountains and empty bowls. He said, the way is not in the sky, The way is in the heart. The woman who swept the temple did not need to talk about mindfulness. She was mindfulness. Every stroke of her broom was deliberate, every step a prayer, every breath a chant. She did not perform her devotion, she lived it. You can memorize every scripture and still miss the truth. You can quote the sutras and still live with bitterness. But you cannot sweep the floor with love for 30 years and not be changed. The Dharma is not performance. It is not approval. It is presence. Many monks seek truth like a prize. They strive. They compare. They seek recognition. But the woman who swept the temple had no audience, no ambition, only a broom, a path, and her attention. That is enough. That is more than enough. There's a Zen saying, before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. Because the truth doesn't take you away from the world. It brings you deeper into it. It makes you pay attention. To dust in corners, to the sound of your own breath, to how gently you place a bowl on the table. We live in a time of noise, of opinions, of spectacle, of credentials. But the Dharma whispers, sweep, breathe, smile, and mean it. That is enough. So wherever you are, whether folding laundry, washing dishes, answering emails, tying your child's shoes, do it with all of you. Do it like the woman who swept the temple, and let the dust be your teacher too. As we move deeper into the quiet teachings of Zen, we come to a story about seeing clearly and understanding true value. Listen carefully to the next story. In a small temple nestled between pine trees and fog, there burned a single candle. It was placed each morning in the center of the meditation hall. No glass shield, no tall holder, just a quiet flame in a shallow dish. It flickered gently as monks came and went. It was not large, not dazzling, but it was always there. Software steady, alive. One morning, a gust of wind swept through the open window. The flame bent low, danced wildly, then steadied, then bent again. A novice sitting nearby grew anxious. He reached to close the window, but the old teacher touched his arm and whispered, "Wait, let it breathe." The flame, though small, did not go out. It fluttered, dimmed, but held on. The room stayed still, and after a few moments the wind passed. The candle straightened, its glow calm once more. The teacher turned to the novice and said, "This is your mind. This is your breath. This is your life." A candle by nature is vulnerable. One sharp breath, and it's gone. One careless movement, and it's lost. But that fragility is also its power, because the candle doesn't resist the wind. It doesn't fight to stay lit. It simply responds, bows, sways, returns. In Buddhism, the flame is often used as a metaphor for consciousness, flickering, ever-changing, not a solid thing, but a process, a dance between wick, wax, and air. Your thoughts are like the flame, your body, the wick, your breath, the air that sustains it, and the wind. That's life. The candle cannot control the wind, but it learns to dance with it. And that is the teaching. The novice asked, "But what if the flame goes out?" The teacher smiled. "Then we light it again, and again, and again. This is the practice. You will lose your calm, You will be shaken. Your light will dim, but the wick is still there. The wax remains. You are never without the capacity to be rekindled. There is a Tibetan saying, "Better to light a single candle than to curse the darkness." But even deeper is this: learn to trust the candle even when the wind rises. In the days that followed, the novice watched the flame more closely. He began to notice how it moved, how it bent without fear, how it never clung to its shape from a moment before. And one morning, during Zazen, as a storm passed outside, he did not flinch. He simply watched the flame bend and return. And in that moment, something in him softened too. This is what meditation teaches, not how to still the wind, but how to let the flame bend without going out, how to meet life's changes with grace, how to stop fearing your own flicker. Grief is a wind, so is joy, so is anger, so is love. You cannot block the breeze without also losing the air you need to burn. You must stay open, even when it stings. Especially then, commentary. The Candle and the Wind is not a story about fragility alone. It's about resilience without resistance. It's about remaining warm, soft, and lit, even when the conditions shift. Even when nothing stays steady but your own willingness to begin again. We often think strength looks like staying the same. But sometimes strength is in swaying, in letting go, in trusting that the flame inside you is not so easily put out. You do not need to burn like a bonfire. You only need to glow enough to see your next step, to offer light to the person beside you, to remind the darkness, "I am still here." The teacher once said, "A candle gives all it has, and still the world is warmed by its passing. So be the candle. Even if your light flickers, even if no one sees, even if the wind blows harder tomorrow, burn anyway, not for show, but because this is who you are." The monk sat alone in the temple courtyard. The wind moved gently through the pines, stirring fallen needles on the stone path. A bell rang in the distance, soft, fading, until the silence returned like a breath held still. It was here, beneath a slanted wooden roof and beside a moss-covered wall, that the question first came. What is the sound of one hand clapping? It was not a riddle, not meant to be solved like a puzzle. It was a koan, spoken not to explain truth, but to unseat the mind that demands explanation. The student who received it was young. His name is not remembered, not because he was unworthy, but because names cling to form, and this teaching pointed beyond. He bowed low to the old master who had given it to him. "Sensei," he said quietly, "I will meditate on it." The master nodded but said no more, and the student went out into the world, not to escape, but to listen more deeply. At first he tried to reason. He sat in the zendo, legs crossed, breath measured, mind tight. He clapped with one hand against the wall. He slapped his thigh. He waved his palm in the air. None of it answered the question. Frustration crept in. "This is foolish," he muttered. But the question remained, not like a stone blocking a path, but like a wind behind him that would not stop. "What is the sound of one hand clapping?" He spoke to other monks. One said, "It is silence." Another said, "It is the absence of duality." A third just laughed and walked away. The student grew weary, but one morning, while sweeping the courtyard with a worn broom, he stopped. The breeze brushed against his robe. The crow called out from the roof beam, and something softened. He had been trying to answer the question, but the koan was not asking for words. It was asking him to see. Long ago, during the Tang dynasty in China, a great Zen master named Hakuju taught in a small mountain temple above the rice terraces. His students came from far and wide, some nobles, some peasants, all seekers. One day, a scholar arrived, well-dressed and full of knowledge. "I have read the sutras," he said, bowing. "I have studied philosophy. Now I wish to understand Zen." Hakuju nodded once and poured him tea. The cup filled, then overflowed. The scholar pulled back. "Master, the cup is full." "Yes," said Hakuju, "and so are you." The scholar blinked. "How can I show you Zen?" Hakuju asked, "if your mind is already spilling over with answers?" The scholar was silent. In Zen, emptiness is not a lack, it is readiness. Not void, but space. And koans are not doors to be unlocked, but mirrors held up to the part of you that cannot be named. Back in the modern temple, the young monk was told by his master, "Take this koan with you." So he left the walls of the monastery and walked for days. He sat by rivers. He listened to windmills. He watched farmers plant rice. Hands sunk in the mud, like prayers returned to the earth. In the clatter of chopsticks. In the rustle of robes. In the space between footfalls and breath. He waited to hear it, the sound of one hand clapping. Years passed. Once, he returned to the master and said, "It must be silence." The master shook his head. Another time he said, "It is everything." The master only smiled. "Keep listening," he said. In a village by the sea, the monk took up work as a fisherman, not to abandon the path, but to live it. He cast his net into the morning fog, watched the sky blush with daybreak, and learned the rhythm of waves as if it were a chant. One evening, a boy approached him on the beach. "Are you a monk?" the boy asked. "I was," he said. "Do you still pray?" The monk nodded. "Yes, but not with words." The boy sat beside him. They watched the tide pull back the shells and kelp and memory. After a long while, the boy whispered, "What are you listening for?" The monk smiled. He held up his open hand. "Nothing," he said, "and everything." Back in the temple, the master grew old. He no longer walked the garden path alone. Students brought him water, prepared his meals, folded his robes. One day, he called for his disciple, the young monk who was no longer young. They sat together beneath the pine beams. "Do you hear it?" the master asked. The disciple nodded. There was no sound, and yet the crows, the wind, the silence itself, all echoed a truth beyond sound and silence. The master reached out and gently placed his palm against the disciple's chest. "Not here," he said, touching his head, "but here." And then he laughed, deep, full, warm as firelight. In Zen, the sound of one hand clapping is not meant to be heard with ears. It is the sound of the mind giving up its struggle, the sound of the ego ceasing to divide. It is not a trick, it is an invitation to let go of the need to name, to release the grip that separates this from that, self from other, sound from silence. Years later, the disciple became a teacher. A student asked him, "What is the sound of one hand clapping?" And the teacher did not answer with words. He picked up a broom and swept the courtyard. He poured tea for his student. He sat, he waited. And the student listened. Zen does not aim to explain. It invites you to experience, to sit still enough that the need to explain dissolves. The sound of one hand clapping is not something you hear. It is something you become when you drop the illusion that there are two hands to begin with. No answer can give you that. Only awareness, only presence, only the quiet bravery to not know. And in that not knowing, you just might begin to hear. The monsoon rains had passed, and the forest paths of Kosambi steamed with quiet life. Leaves dripped with silver beads. Frogs croaked low from the shadows. And above it all, the scent of wet bark and jasmine lingered like breath held too long. Under a canopy of tall sal trees, the Buddha sat surrounded by monks. They had walked for days to gather here. Some were old, most were young, their robes still crisp from devotion, their minds still sharp with questions. And today, the Blessed One had agreed to speak, not of morality, nor of meditation, but of something far subtler, of misunderstanding. He began, not with pronouncement, but with silence. Then, as the breeze shifted through the trees, he spoke. "There are those," he said, "who come to the Dharma like a man searching for a serpent." A few monks glanced up. Serpents were no small matter in these woods, slender and swift, some deadly, some divine. "This man," the Buddha continued, "is told that a snake dwells near the roots of a great tree, so he goes into the forest to catch it. But he does not learn the proper way. He does not bring a forked stick. He does not wait for the right moment. He sees movement in the grass and lunges with bare hands." A few younger monks leaned forward. "What happens?" one whispered. The Buddha's gaze passed over them like moonlight on water. He seizes the snake by the tail. A ripple of discomfort passed through the listeners. "And the snake," he said, "twists and strikes." He paused. "And so it is with those who take hold of the Dharma wrongly, grasping at the tail, not understanding the nature of what they hold. And when it turns against them, they blame the teaching, never seeing that it was their own hand that erred." Silence fell again. It was not a parable to soothe, but to stir. For many in that circle had studied hard, memorized discourses, debated with pride. They recited verses in the marketplace, corrected others in the villages, and took satisfaction in knowing the words of the Buddha by heart. But the words were not the snake, and the Buddha knew it. A senior monk, Kakana, bowed his head and asked softly, "Blessed One, how does one hold the Dharma correctly?" The Buddha nodded. "Imagine," he said, "a man crossing a river. The current is swift, the far bank promises safety, and he finds no boat, no bridge. So he gathers branches, grass, and reeds. He binds them tightly. He makes a raft." The monks followed, some nodding. With effort, he crosses the water. And when he reaches the other shore, does he carry the raft on his back for the rest of the journey? A few smiled. A few looked unsure. "No," said the Buddha, He leaves it behind, grateful, respectful, but he does not cling to it. He let that image hang in the warm, moist air. So too is the Dharma, he said, a raft to cross, not a burden to bear forever, not a weapon to strike others, not a badge to wear. A soft murmur of recognition passed through the monks. But some, he continued, treat the Dharma as the man who grabs the snake's tail. They take hold of words, of verses, of rules, not to cross the river, but to shout from the shore. He turned his palm upward. They say, I know, you do not. They say, this is the only way, yours is wrong. They say, I have read, I have memorized, I have mastered. He paused. But what have they understood? A breeze stirred the forest floor. A leaf spiraled down like a question with no answer. Understanding, he said, is not repetition. Wisdom is not memorization, and truth is not a prize to be clutched. He looked at them all. Do not seize the tail. Learn how the snake moves. Watch, be still, approach with care. Grasp rightly, not to own, but to understand. A young novice, no older than 15, raised his hand timidly. But blessed one, he said, what if one clings to the raft out of reverence, out of gratitude? The Buddha smiled gently. Reverence is not the same as attachment, he said. Gratitude flows like a river. Clinging dams the stream. He folded his hands in his lap. To let go does not mean to forget. It means to honor the purpose and move on when it has been fulfilled. Several monks bowed. Some looked thoughtful, others uneasy, for the teaching had pierced the pride of many. A monk named Sati, known for his keen memory and rigid interpretations, frowned. But Lord, he said, should we not defend the Dharma from false views? Yes, said the Buddha without hesitation. But first, defend it from misunderstanding within yourself. A man who argues from ego may win the debate and lose the path. He looked directly at Sati. If you know a verse, but use it to shame another, you have caught the tail. He turned to the group once more. If you teach to elevate yourself, you have caught the tail. If you study only to be praised, you have caught the tail. If you hold to rules to feel superior, you have caught the tail. And if you mistake knowledge for wisdom, you have caught the tail. The forest was utterly still now. Even the birds had quieted. And when the snake turns and bites, the Buddha asked, you will say the Dharma is false, that it failed you, that it was sharp, cruel, or useless, but the snake was never to blame. A few monks bowed their heads in shame. One of the older mendicants, seated on a mat of grass near the front, exhaled deeply. I have clutched many tails in my time, he said, but now I wish only to learn how to see clearly. The Buddha nodded. That is the beginning of wisdom. That evening, as twilight turned the forest gold, the monks moved quietly through the camp. No chants, no debates, just footsteps and thought. Sati sat alone by the fire, his manuscript scrolls untouched. The novice who had asked about the raft sat beside him, quiet, respectful. Sati turned and whispered, I used to think that knowing every word would make me wise. The boy looked at him. And now? Sati stared at the flames. Now I wonder if I even know how to listen. In the stillness of the forest, the words of the Buddha echoed like a distant bell. Do not grasp the tail, learn how the snake moves. And in the hearts of those who truly listened, the Dharma shed its scales of pride, of certainty, of rigid form, and began, at last, to breathe. With each step on the Zen path, a new lesson unfolds. Now we turn to a story about recognition, of self, of others, and of what truly matters. Listen carefully to the next story. A monk once asked his teacher, "Master, where does the path to enlightenment begin?" The teacher did not answer. Instead, he stood up, walked across the room, and swept the floor. Later that night, the monk asked again, "Then where does it end?" The teacher looked up from pouring tea and said, "If it ends, it was never the way." This is the story of non-arrival, the path that unfolds not to get somewhere, but to be fully where you are. Long ago, in a forest monastery, a wandering monk arrived seeking answers. He had studied every scripture, debated with scholars, and meditated in caves for years. And yet, he felt restless, incomplete, as if truth always lived just beyond the next bend. He bowed to the abbot and said, "I have walked many roads. I seek the one that leads to awakening." The abbot nodded and replied, "Very well. Walk with me tomorrow at dawn." The next morning, they walked. Through bamboo groves, past quiet ponds, up rocky trails where mist clung to the earth like breath. They walked all day. The monk said little. By dusk, they had returned to where they started. The monk frowned. "You promised to show me the path." The abbot said, "I did. We walked it." The monk blinked. "But we arrived nowhere." The abbot smiled. "Exactly." The student wanted something linear, a goal, a peak. A moment where the sky split open and declared, "Here it is." But the Dharma is not a destination. It is the walking itself. It is the attention you give to each step, the space between one breath and the next. The Buddha did not climb a holy mountain to reach truth. He sat under a tree and stopped seeking. You do not become awake like winning a race. You remember the truth that was always here. Under the hurry, beneath the striving, inside the stillness of the now. When we think of progress, we think forward. Farther, better, beyond. But what if the path moves deeper, not farther? Inward, not onward. Like returning to the place you began, but seeing it clearly for the first time. The monk eventually understood. He stopped chasing high teachings, stopped measuring his worth by distance traveled. He began to walk slowly. He bowed to doorways, thanked his bowl before eating, washed his feet with care, and in those simple moments, something softened, something opened. There's a Zen saying, "Before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water." The tasks do not change, but the one doing them no longer seeks to arrive. He is already home. In the end, the way is not mystical. It is making tea without rushing. It is folding robes with full attention. It is greeting the morning with breath instead of thought. And in those everyday movements, the path walks itself. The old abbot left behind a note before his passing. It read, "Those who hurry are carried by illusion. Those who walk with it vanish into the way." The monk later became a teacher. When asked by a student, "Where is the path?" he would only point at the floor beneath their feet. "Here," he'd say. "Now walk." So if you are still searching, still waiting to feel worthy, enlightened, or arrived, pause. Notice your breath. Feel your weight on the earth. Let this moment be enough, because the greatest truth, there is nowhere to get to, and still, you walk. She never meant harm. She only passed on what she heard. A whispered comment here, a raised eyebrow there, a half-finished sentence passed along like a secret prayer. Her name was Sister Nima, young, lively, kind mostly, but her words moved quickly and quietly unraveled the thread of trust inside the temple. At first, it was small. She meditates longer when people are watching. They say the head cook isn't really vegetarian. I heard the abbot used to be married. No malice, just conversation, just sharing. But soon, monks began to turn away from each other in the corridor. Silent meals grew tenser. Chanting lost its rhythm. Smiles stiffened at the edges. No one named the cause, but it lingered, like smoke with no fire. One afternoon, the abbot asked Sister Nima to join him in the garden. The plum trees were beginning to blossom, delicate petals stirring in the breeze. He held a small bag in his hand. "Walk with me," he said gently. They walked in silence down the path that circled the temple grounds. After a while, he opened the bag and began to scatter chicken feathers along the way. Sister Nima tilted her head. "Why are you doing that?" The abbot didn't answer. When they returned to the garden, he handed her the empty bag. "Now," he said, "go and collect them all." She blinked. "But the wind's taken them. They're scattered everywhere." He looked at her and said softly, "So too with your words." That night she wept. This is the story of speech and consequence, of how sound can build or destroy. Commentary. In Buddhist practice, right speech is one of the Eightfold Path's pillars. It sounds simple, but it is one of the hardest, because words don't vanish when we stop speaking. They ripple, they stain, they take root in someone else's mind, sometimes forever. Sister Nima did not speak with cruelty, but neither did she speak with care. And in that space, in the absence of intention, harm took hold. We often forget how powerful language is. A word can lift someone from despair or push them over the edge. It can invite reflection or ignite shame. Words are not just air. They are actions. They build worlds. There's a Zen saying, "Speak only if it improves upon the silence." Sister Nima filled silence with curiosity, suspicion, drama, and the silence grew quieter, but colder, until no one trusted what they didn't hear. The Buddha once said, "A person is not wise because they speak much. A person is wise when they speak what is true and what causes no harm." That is the gate of right speech. Is it true? Is it necessary? Is it kind? If it fails even one, it's better to let it drift away like a feather on the wind. After that night, Sister Nima changed. She stopped repeating what others said. She listened more, spoke less. When she did speak, her words came slowly, like water poured from a clean bowl. The monks began to look at her differently, not because she had become wise overnight, but because she was watching herself now, watching what she left behind in others when she spoke. And over time, trust returned to the temple, not because of a sermon, not because of a rule, but because one person saw the feathers scatter and chose to stop scattering more. So speak with care. Speak like you're building something with your breath. Because you are. Every sentence is a seed, and whether it blooms or bruises is up to you. The forest path was dappled with golden light. Shafts of sun fell through the tall teak trees, casting long shadows that shifted with the breeze. A group of monks walked quietly, their feet bare on the earth, their minds turned inward. They had been traveling for 2 days now, through fields, across shallow rivers, under wide skies that watched without comment. And ahead of them, seated on a smooth, flat stone beside a trickling stream, was the Buddha. He was waiting, not impatiently, but as a mountain waits for the wind. The monks approached and bowed. Some sat, others stood, resting their walking sticks against the roots of a banyan tree. One among them, Ananda, had seen something on the road that troubled him. A farmer's son had been bitten by a snake. He had seen the child cry out, flailing in fear and pain. The boy's wound could be treated, but the panic, the despair that had settled in his eyes lingered in Ananda's heart. And so he asked, "Blessed One, why do some suffer more than others, even when the wound is the same?" The Buddha turned to him gently and answered with a story. "Imagine," he said, "a man walking through a quiet field. The day is calm, the air is warm, and then," he raised his hand, "an arrow strikes him." The monk stirred slightly. He gasps in pain. The wound is deep. The arrow has pierced his flesh. He clutches at it. This, Ananda, is the first arrow. He paused, but then the Buddha's voice softened, deepened. Then the man grows angry. "Why me?" he cries. "What have I done to deserve this?" He curses the heavens. He blames the gods. He weeps not only for the pain, but for the story of the pain. He looked slowly at the circle of listeners. That is the second arrow. Some monks frowned slightly, as if trying to follow an invisible thread. The first arrow, the Buddha said, is the pain we cannot avoid. The body ages. Illness comes. People leave us. We are wounded by life, by loss, by chance. He drew a line in the dirt with his finger. But the second arrow is the one we shoot into ourselves. He tapped his chest lightly, with thought, with resistance, with fear, with story. Ananda nodded slowly. "So the suffering comes not only from what happens," he said, "but from how the mind meets it." The Buddha smiled. "Exactly." A young monk, Rahula, tilted his head. "But Lord, if a man is struck by an arrow, how can he not cry out? How can he not fear the pain?" The Buddha's gaze was kind. "He may cry out," he said, "but the wise man does not turn the cry into a prison." He looked at Rahula. "You may feel pain, but you do not have to become pain. The wind rustled through the leaves above them, as if nature itself exhaled in agreement. To feel sadness when a friend dies, that is the first arrow. But to say, "I will never be whole again," or "I should have done more," that is the second. He pointed to the stream beside them. Water flows. It does not cling to a shape. When pain arises, let it arise. See it, feel it, but do not wrap your identity around it. An older monk, who had once been a warrior, bowed his head. "I have carried many arrows in my life," he said softly, "not in the flesh, but in memory." The Buddha nodded. The past is full of arrows we keep alive with thought. The future is full of arrows we imagine before they are even shot. He looked toward the trees. But the present holds only the first arrow, and even that, when seen clearly, passes. A silence followed, the kind of silence that isn't empty, but full. The Buddha let it linger. Then he spoke again. "You are not wrong to feel pain. You are not less awakened because you grieve, or ache, or tremble." He gestured to his own chest. "This body too has known hunger, illness, sorrow." He placed his hand upon the ground. "But when pain comes, I do not build a house around it. I do not say, 'This is me, this is mine, this is forever.'" He looked at each monk now, one by one. To awaken is not to avoid arrows. It is to stop shooting the second. Later that evening, as the monks prepared camp near a circle of moss-covered stones, a fire crackled quietly in their midst. Ananda sat with Rahula and the older warrior monk. They said little, but their silence was different now. Not numb, not avoidant, just aware. Rahula watched a moth flutter near the flame and whispered, "Even the fire burns only what touches it." Ananda smiled. The old monk closed his eyes. And in that moment, the Buddha's words drifted across the darkness like a breeze through tall grass. "The first arrow belongs to the world. The second belongs to you. You can choose to set it down." In time, the teaching of the two arrows would find its way into distant lands, distant minds, translated, adapted, retold. Some would call it psychology. Others would call it mindfulness. Some would not give it a name at all. But beneath every version, the truth would remain. Pain is part of life, but suffering is what we build atop it. A story, a wall, a self. But when we learn to pause, to see the first arrow for what it is, and let go of the second dash, then peace returns. Quietly, naturally, like a wound that knows how to heal. As our exploration of Zen Buddhism deepens, let us listen to a story that reveals how true worth is often overlooked. Here starts the next story. It is said that after his awakening under the Bodhi tree, the Buddha sat in silence. Not because he had nothing to say, but because no words could contain what he saw. The world shimmered before him like a dew-covered web catching the morning light. Everything, every leaf, every breath, every thought was connected. Not metaphorically, not poetically, but truly. And so, in that first silent gaze, the Avatamsaka Sutra was born, not as speech, but as vision, a vast, radiant vision of interbeing. Imagine this. A net stretches across the cosmos, infinite in all directions. At each knot of the net, there is a jewel, and in each jewel, the entire net is reflected. Every other jewel, every other reflection. No part is separate. No jewel exists on its own. This is Indra's net, one of the core images in the Avatamsaka Sutra. It is not a fantasy. It is how reality is structured. Everything contains everything. You are a jewel in the net. So is the ant beneath your foot. So is the person you haven't forgiven. So is the star pulsing light from 10 billion years ago. Each one reflects all. And when one moves, all are changed. This is not romanticism. It is truth seen from beyond the ego. In the Avatamsaka, it is said that a single moment of insight can contain the entire Dharma, and a single grain of sand can reveal all Buddhas, because nothing is just itself. A drop of water is also the cloud, the river, the ocean, the drought, the cry of thirst, the hand that turns on the tap. All these are not separate events. They are expressions of one great dance. There's a story told from the sutra. The Bodhisattva Sudhana travels in search of awakening. He visits 52 teachers. Each one shows him a different truth. A sailor, a child, a gardener, a courtesan, a beggar, a monk. Not one has the final answer, because in this vision there is no final answer. There is only deepening, broadening, the ever-widening ripple of understanding that you are not apart from anything, not even from the question. In the end, Sudhana meets Samantabhadra, who tells him, the path is infinite, the practice is the vision is you. And in that moment, Sudhana realizes he was never seeking something out there. He was walking through his own reflection. If you truly see this just once, you can never hate again in the same way. Because to harm another is to harm yourself. To lift another is to lift all. You do not have to understand the whole net. You only have to touch one jewel, a single act of kindness, a single moment of stillness, a single breath where you choose love over fear. That one act changes everything, because the net responds, because you are not alone, because no wave rises by itself. Commentary. The Avatamsaka Sutra is sometimes called the flower ornament scripture, because it reveals the beauty of reality as it is, not flat, not linear, but multi-dimensional, like a lotus unfolding endlessly in every direction. In our daily lives, we feel separate. I am here, you are there, this is mine, that is yours. But this is illusion. A necessary illusion perhaps, but illusion nonetheless. Reality is interpenetration. You are in me, I am in you. Even now, reading these words, your breath carries the oxygen once exhaled by trees that died 1,000 years ago. Your thoughts are shaped by your grandmother's voice, by books written by strangers, by the laughter of a friend you no longer speak to. Even your loneliness is shared, because someone else right now feels it too. This is not meant to overwhelm you. It is meant to free you, because when you understand interconnection, you do not have to do everything. You only have to do something, and trust that it matters. Because it does, because the net responds. A Zen teacher once said, When a bird sings on one branch, the whole forest awakens. You may be that bird. You may be the branch, or the silence that follows. Each one is essential. Each one reflects the whole. You are not small. You are a jewel in the net, reflecting everything, and being reflected by everything. So polish your jewel, not for glory, but for others, because the clearer you become, the clearer the whole web shines. The Buddha sat beneath a sal tree, where the light filtered through in flickering gold. The breeze played gently with the hem of his robe, and the scent of early jasmine lingered in the air. Around him, the monks gathered like ripples around a pebble dropped in a still pond. Quiet, present, steady. They bowed one by one and took their seats on the grass, robes the colour of ochre and clay. The forest around them hummed with life, birds calling from high branches, the distant crack of bamboo, and the low murmur of wind moving through tall grass. The Buddha's eyes remained half lowered, still and soft. Then from the circle, a young monk rose. He was thin, his frame taut with discipline, but his brow was furrowed, his lips pressed with quiet unrest. He stepped forward and bowed deeply. "Master," he said, "I have studied the teachings as best I can. I rise before dawn. I recite every sutra. I memorize every verse. I follow every precept. And still, I suffer. Still my mind is troubled. I fear I've become attached to the very teachings meant to free me." He hesitated. Am I clinging to the Dharma itself? The Buddha looked upon him gently. "You remind me of a traveler," he said. "Let me tell you a story." The monks settled deeper into stillness. The forest too seemed to pause. "There was once a man," the Buddha began, "wandering through a thick and treacherous forest. The trees were close, the thorns sharp. On all sides he was hemmed in by danger, wild beasts, hunger, cries in the distance that made his skin crawl. For hours, maybe days, he pushed forward, uncertain and afraid, until he came to a wide, roaring river. On the other side, he could see sunlight falling on an open path. He saw smoke curling from a distant hut. Safety, rest, the way forward. The Buddha paused, letting the image take shape. But there was no bridge, no boat. The current was fierce. He could not swim across without being swept away. So the man worked. He cut branches, wove reeds, bent saplings into shape. With patience, sweat, and determination, he fashioned a raft, just strong enough to carry him. He clutched it tightly, guided it across the swirling water. His heart pounded with fear, but he reached the far bank, soaked, trembling, but alive. The Buddha's eyes swept slowly across the circle of monks. "Now imagine," he continued, "that once on land, the man looked at the raft and said, 'This has saved me. This is precious. I will carry it with me always.' And so he lifted it onto his shoulders and continued his journey, the heavy wood digging into his back, slowing his steps, wearing him down." A faint rustle of recognition moved through the group. "Would that make sense?" the Buddha asked. The monks shook their heads. "Of course not," the Buddha said. "The raft served its purpose. It brought him across. To carry it afterward, to cling to it, would only bring suffering." He turned to the young monk. "So too with the Dharma." The monk blinked, uncertain. "But," "The teachings are sacred," he said. "Aren't they to be kept close? Aren't they the source of liberation?" The Buddha nodded. "They are sacred, but sacred does not mean permanent. The Dharma is not a cage. It is not a burden to be shouldered forever. It is a tool, a raft, a means to cross the river of confusion and craving. Once you have crossed, you need not drag the boat behind you." Another monk raised his hand. "Master," he asked softly, "what if one forgets or finds themselves back at the river?" "Then rebuild the raft," said the Buddha. "Relearn, begin again, but never mistake the raft for the shore. The Dharma is not the destination, it is the guide." A hush followed, filled only by the hush of the wind and the rhythmic clicking of cicadas. Later that evening, as the sun descended behind the line of trees and turned the sky to a warm, bruised lavender, the monks returned to their huts, some with new questions, others with lighter hearts. But the young monk lingered. He wandered to the river near the monastery, where the water curled gently around stones and reeds. He sat on the bank, knees pulled in, and listened. The moon had begun its slow rise, casting silver light across the ripples. The monk breathed deeply. He thought of the teachings he had memorized, the sutras chanted, the rules obeyed, the rituals performed. Each had been a plank, a vine, a thread in the raft that carried him across his inner storm. He remembered the fear that had driven him to this path, the grief of his father's death, the anger he once held like a fire in his chest, the shame of worldly desire. Each teaching had helped him cross some inner current, but now, here he sat, dry but weary, clutching the raft as though it were still necessary. And he saw. He had carried not just the teachings, but his pride in them, his fear of failure, his guilt for each imperfect thought, his grasping for perfection, and all of these too were rafts, built to carry him through old pain, meant to be honored, yes, but then let go. He closed his eyes. The breeze shifted. The night deepened. By morning, he rose and returned to the Buddha. He bowed low, his hands open, his heart quiet. "I have crossed," he said softly, and the Buddha replied, "Then walk freely." No further instruction, no ceremony, just a smile, the kind that sees without needing to explain. Because truth, like a raft, is not meant to be worshipped. It is meant to be used, held for a time, then released. And so the monk walked on, not empty, but unburdened. He still chanted, still meditated, still studied the sutras. But now he did so not out of fear, not to be perfect, but because he understood their purpose. They were not chains, they were maps, and once you arrive, you do not need the map to breathe. Years later, when a new monk came with the same question, full of guilt, clinging to rules like a man clutching driftwood, he told him of the raft. He pointed to the river and smiled. It was still dark when the monk lit the kitchen fire. Outside, the mountain air clung to the stones like breath not yet exhaled. Frost kissed the corners of the monastery walls, and the wind had not yet stirred the bell. But inside, the kitchen was alive. The tenzo, the head cook, moved with quiet care. He chopped vegetables with reverence, washed rice as though touching the Dharma, boiled water like preparing an offering to the unseen. Not because guests were coming, not because someone was watching, but because every movement was practice. In Zen monasteries, the Tenzo is not just a cook. He is a teacher, a practitioner, a guardian of presence. His role is not low, it is sacred, because Zen does not draw lines between spiritual and ordinary. It dissolves them, and what remains is just this moment. And this moment includes rice. The great Zen master Dogen once wrote a full text on this, Instructions for the Tenzo. He said, "Do not treat cooking lightly. When you cook rice, wash your mind. When you slice roots, cut away delusion." He had learned this lesson young. When Dogen first arrived in China seeking true Dharma, he met an elderly Tenzo in a seaside monastery. The man was in his 60s, sun-worn, with sleeves rolled and hands deep in soaking beans. Dogen bowed respectfully. "Venerable one," he said, "why do you, at your age and rank, work in the kitchen?" The old monk looked up and said, "If not me, then who? And if not now, then when?" Dogen offered to help. The Tenzo smiled. "Thank you," he said, "but this is my practice." Later that day, Dogen saw the same monk drying mushrooms in the sun. He asked, "Why not do this tomorrow? The sun will rise again." The Tenzo simply said, "I do not wait for tomorrow's sun. My life is today." And in that moment, Dogen understood something deeper than scripture. That enlightenment is not found apart from daily life, but within it, in the steam rising from a pot, in the rhythm of chopping, in the patience of stirring porridge without haste. Years later, as a master, Dogen taught his students, when you cook, just cook. Don't think, I am cooking. Don't think, this is just food. Don't think, this is not meditation. Make every motion the expression of the way. In the monastery, the Tenzo bows before entering the kitchen. He arranges the knives, washes the board. He does not multitask. He does not rush. When he stirs everything. When he scrubs the pot, he scrubs the self. There is no low task, only low awareness. There is a koan that asks, "What is Buddha?" One master answered, 3 pounds of flax. Another said, "The rice cake on the shelf." Because Zen knows, the sacred hides in plain sight. Not above us, not beyond us, but within the ordinary, when seen without distraction. In modern life, we resist this. We see chores as interruptions, dishes as delays, errands as obstacles to real practice. But Zen asks, what if the very thing you're avoiding is your path? What if folding laundry is a bow? What if sweeping the floor is a blessing? What if cleaning the toilet is a teaching and letting go? The Tenzo is not trying to finish cooking. He is inhabiting it, with full presence, with full breath, with no need for applause, because practice is not what we do on the cushion, it is how we live off it. Dogen wrote, "See with your ears, hear with your eyes, prepare the food with your whole body-mind." Not poetry, not metaphor, instruction to become so present that the boundaries dissolve. To listen to the rice as it boils, to feel the carrot before slicing, to bow to the ladle before lifting it, because when we fully meet a moment, there is no self left to be enlightened. Only the moment, only the rice, only the breath. Once, a student complained, "Master, I have no time for meditation. I spend all day in the kitchen." The master asked, "Do you wash the rice?" "Yes." "Do you chop the greens?" "Yes." "Then why do you call that not meditating?" Commentary. Zen dismantles the hierarchy between sacred and mundane. It reminds us, you don't need incense to wake up. You don't need chants to be present. You need rice and a spoon, and the willingness to give yourself to both without resistance. If you're waiting for your life to get quieter before you practice, you may wait forever. But if you meet this moment, this task, as the way itself, then even the laundry becomes a sutra. Even the shopping list becomes a mantra. Even the broom becomes your teacher. The Tenzo is not just feeding bodies, he is cooking truth. And when the pot is washed, the ladle hung, and the kitchen swept, there is nothing left to attain, because it was never somewhere else. It was always here. In the steam, in the stillness, in the rhythm of this one breath. Continuing along the path of Zen insight, we pause now to hear a teaching about perception and hidden value. Listen carefully to the next story. A monk walked along a dusty trail, his robe fluttering slightly with each step. The morning air was clear, the sun warm but soft. A few birds called lazily from the treetops, but the monk's brow was furrowed. He had been sent to deliver a letter to a nearby monastery, and he was late. He had misread the schedule, taken the wrong turn, and now walked quickly, heart agitated beneath his robe. Each step struck the earth too hard. Each breath was shallow. His mind raced ahead. Will they think me careless? How could I have made such a mistake? I should have left earlier. What kind of monk forgets the path? Then he heard a voice behind him. Excuse me, Sir Monk. He turned to see a young boy, no older than 10, running up the path barefoot. He held something cupped in his palms. The monk paused. Yes? The boy stopped, panting, and held out his hands. Inside them sat a small, round pebble, no bigger than a thumbprint. It's beautiful, isn't it? The boy said. The monk looked down. It was smooth, flecked with tiny bits of crystal, glinting gently in the light. I found it near the stream, the boy said. It looked lonely. I thought maybe someone should notice. The monk smiled politely. That's kind of you. He began to turn away, but the boy looked up at him and said something that stopped him mid-step. Did you see any of the flowers you passed today? The monk blinked. What? The boy tilted his head. You've walked almost a mile. The path is full of little blue flowers, but your robe is dusty and your eyes are tight. You didn't see any of them, did you? The monk looked down at the pebble again. Then slowly, he sat on a flat rock at the side of the path. The boy grinned and plopped down beside him, offering the pebble again. And the monk, still holding the unopened letter, took it gently in his hand. This is the story of mindfulness in ordinary things. Commentary. In Zen, we often speak of awakening as though it is some great flash of light or a sudden shift in consciousness. But often, awakening is small, like noticing a flower you've walked past for weeks, or hearing the sound of your own breath after a hard day, or holding a pebble that simply is. The monk had been walking as if his destination were the only thing that mattered. His hurry had made him blind. Not because he lacked wisdom, but because he had left the present moment behind in favor of imagined shame and future apologies. The boy, with no training and no robe, was more awake than he, not because he had studied sutras, but because he saw what was in front of him, and he shared it. There's a Zen phrase: the miracle is not to walk on water, but to walk on the earth. The monk delivered the letter later that day, but he took a different path back, slower, softer. He paused to notice the flowers the boy had spoken of, tiny blossoms with indigo petals, scattered like spilled paint across the roadside. He bowed to them, then reached into his robe and touched the small pebble still in his sleeve. After that, he kept it on the windowsill beside his mat, not as a relic, but as a reminder that awareness begins not with enlightenment, but with noticing what's already here. We spend our lives waiting for bigger signs, bigger truths, more impressive moments. But the sacred is everywhere, in the weight of a spoon, the hush of dusk, the rhythm of footsteps, the coolness of a cup before tea is poured. The boy in the story grew up. He never became a monk. But he taught his children to pause, to touch the bark of trees, to look into puddles after rain, to name the colors of the sky at sunset. And his children did the same. Sometimes the greatest teachers do not stand at the front of a hall. They kneel by a stream and lift a stone, so let the pebble teach you. Let it slow you down. Let it whisper. This moment matters too. He never spoke a word, not to the monks, not to the villagers, not even when invited to tea by the abbot himself. He simply bowed and walked and bowed again. They called him the silent pilgrim. He had no belongings except a small cloth bag and thick wooden sandals worn smooth from years on the road. His face was weathered by wind and sun. His back slightly bent, not from age, but from reverence. Because every third step, he stopped, placed his palms together, and bowed to the earth. Step, step, bow, step, step, bow. He traveled like this for hundreds of miles, through rice paddies and dusty plains, through mountain passes and city streets, through cold rain, sharp sun, and falling snow. He never begged, never asked, never preached, only bowed. When he reached the gates of a remote temple high in the hills, a monk ran inside to announce, "The pilgrim has come." Curious, the monks gathered. Some stood with folded arms. Others watched from the steps. One scoffed, "What is this? A show?" Another whispered, "Surely he must be seeking merit or praise." But the abbot only smiled. "Wait. Watch." The pilgrim reached the stone path before the temple gate. Step, step, bow. His palms touched the gravel. His forehead met the earth. He rose slowly and continued. All morning, he bowed up the path. By noon, he had reached the courtyard. The air was silent, except for the soft crunch of gravel and the long breath between bows. Step, step, bow. By evening, he reached the base of the temple steps. He did not climb them. Instead, he bowed once more, then turned, and began his journey down the mountain. Step, step, bow. The monks were stunned. He never entered. He never asked to stay. He came all this way just to bow. The abbot nodded. And in bowing, he entered more deeply than any of us. This is the story of wordless devotion, of practice not performed, but lived in the marrow of each step. Commentary. In the West, we often think wisdom must be spoken. That truth arrives in grand lectures, eloquent teachings, powerful arguments. But sometimes the greatest teachings are silent. The silent pilgrim did not explain his path. He became it. With each bow, he gave himself to the moment, to humility, to gratitude, to presence. He bowed not to worship the earth, but to remember he belonged to it. In Buddhism, we bow not out of subservience. We bow to let go of the self, to surrender ego, to honor interbeing. The sky does not rise without the sun. The tree does not grow without the soil. You do not breathe without the generosity of everything around you. To bow is to remember that. The pilgrim didn't need a teacher. Every grain of dust was his teacher. Every blister, his scripture. Every bow, a verse in the sutra of the path. He asked for nothing, judged no one, corrected no teachings. He gave only his body, his time, his breath. That was his offering. That was his sermon. One monk, deeply moved, asked the abbot, "Should I walk like that? Bow like that?" The abbot said, "Not unless your heart is already bowing. It's not about copying the form. It's about sincerity. Some bow with their bodies and judge with their minds. Others bow with their actions and remain upright inside. But true bowing begins within. It is a quiet crumbling of pride, a surrender of the need to be seen, a softening into the now. There is a Zen phrase, "The great way is not difficult for those who have no preferences." The silent pilgrim had no preference for praise or obscurity, for arrival or delay. His goal was not the temple. His goal was the bow itself. Step, step, bow. Again and again, until there was no one left doing it. Only the gesture, only the giving, only the way. Wherever you are, whoever you are, you can bow too, not just with your body, but with how you listen, with how you wait, how you serve, how you show up for the dust on the floor or the silence in a friend's eyes. To bow is to soften, to slow, to remember what matters, and sometimes to say everything without a single word. In the still hush before dawn, the palace of Kapilavastu stirred with the soft rustle of silks and the distant rhythm of footfalls on marble. The world outside was already unfolding, but within the gilded walls where Prince Siddhartha lived, every petal was sheltered from the wind of suffering. No wrinkles marred the faces of the attendants. No cries of illness echoed through the halls. No one spoke of death. His father, King Suddhodana, had ensured that his son knew only ease, beauty, and delight. The astrologers had predicted that the young prince would become either a great king or a holy man who would renounce the world. Fearing the latter, the king built a world without shadows. Flowers were changed before they wilted. Servants were chosen for their youth and radiance. Pain was not allowed to show its face. But truth, like the sun, cannot be hidden forever, and yearning, like a seed buried deep, will reach for the light even through stone. On a day shaped like any other, Siddhartha requested to ride beyond the palace gates. He was 29, cloaked in fine fabric and surrounded by careful illusions. Yet something inside him whispered of incompleteness, like a bell struck in the distance that would not stop ringing. There was a tightness in his chest he could not name, a hollowness that no feast or dance could fill. The charioteer Channa guided the prince through the streets of the city. The morning was bright, the people beautiful, the air filled with jasmine. Musicians played in courtyards, children laughed in sunbeams, all seemed perfect. But then the illusion cracked. At the edge of a quiet street, they saw a man hunched and trembling. His hair was white, his back bowed by years. His skin sagged like parchment, and his hands clutched a stick. He moved slowly, as though the air itself had thickened around him. Siddhartha leaned forward. "Channa," he asked, "what is wrong with that man?" "That is old age, my lord," Channa replied. "It comes to all who live long. The body weakens, the bones bend, the senses dull. No one escapes it." The prince stared at the man as he passed, the way he paused to catch his breath, the way his eyes seemed clouded with time. Siddhartha's hands gripped the side of the chariot. "Will this come to me?" he asked. "Yes, my lord, to you, to me, to all." Siddhartha fell silent. The first veil had lifted. The garden he had lived in was not eternal. Beneath the fragrance was decay. Beneath the music was silence. The next day, restless and inwardly stirred, he asked to go again. And again the world revealed another layer. As they turned a corner, Siddhartha saw a man collapsed by the roadside. His face was contorted in pain, his skin grey and clammy. His limbs twisted unnaturally, and he coughed as if his lungs were full of fire. "And this?" Siddhartha asked. "This is sickness, my lord," Channa said gently. "It strikes without warning. It takes the strong and lays them low. There is no rank or title that shields against it." The prince watched as a woman tried to cool the man's brow, her eyes wide with helplessness. A child clung to her skirts. Siddhartha turned away, but the image would not leave him. How many in his palace had hidden such suffering behind closed doors? How much of the world had he not seen? On the third day, the air hung heavy with heat. A solemn hush drifted through the streets. Siddhartha and Channa followed the sound of quiet chanting and saw a procession winding through the alleys. Men carried a shrouded form on a wooden bier, garlands laid across it. Behind them, mourners walked with bowed heads, incense curling in the air. "Is he asleep?" the prince asked, though he already knew. "He is dead, my lord," Channa replied. "This is the fate of all who are born." The prince felt something deep within him fracture. He watched the faces of the mourners, their grief like a tide with no shore. The man on the bier would never speak again, never eat, never laugh. All that he was had ended. And this comes to everyone. Everyone, my lord. The rich, the poor, the wise, the foolish. Siddhartha did not speak on the way back. The chariot wheels hummed against the stone, but his thoughts made no sound. The world had split open. Beneath the silks, beneath the pleasures, there was something hollow, a truth too vast to ignore. He lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling. His wife, Yasodhara, slept beside him. Their son, Rahula, breathed softly in the next room. And yet, Peace evaded him. He saw the old man, the sick man, the corpse. He saw them behind every smile, beneath every ornament. He knew now that no palace could protect against time. No love could shield against loss. No beauty could outpace decay. And then, on the fourth day, they rode out once more. This time, they saw a man in saffron robes, walking barefoot along the path. His eyes were calm, his steps steady. He carried no gold, wore no jewelry. His face bore the lines of both suffering and peace. "Who is that?" Siddhartha asked. "A seeker, my lord," Channa said. "One who has renounced the world to find the path beyond birth and death. One who walks in search of freedom." Siddhartha watched him until he vanished into the distance. No guards flanked him, no luxuries trailed behind, and yet something about the man radiated a serenity deeper than anything Siddhartha had known. That night, the prince stood at the edge of his sleeping son's cradle, not daring to wake him. He touched the boy's soft cheek, his heart torn between two loves, the love of his family and the love of truth. He stepped into the garden one last time, its scent bittersweet. He bowed before the moonlit statue of his ancestors, and with each step toward the gate, he shed a piece of his former self, his earrings, his sword, his silks. He left that night, into the forest, into silence, into the unknown. The four sights had shattered his illusion, but they had also opened the gate. And on the other side of that gate was the beginning of a path. The path that would change the world. As we drift deeper into the still waters of Zen, a quiet teaching begins to rise, one that speaks of clarity and of value not always seen. Listen gently now. The next story begins. Every morning at 6:15 she opened the curtains. The light crept in slowly, soft and golden, and the photo on the mantel caught it just right. It was old, sepia-toned, edges curled like leaves in autumn. A man in uniform, smiling, handsome, still young. Her husband, gone now for 17 years. Miriam never moved the photo. It stayed on the same spot. Third tile from the right, 2 inches from the lamp. She didn't talk to it, didn't cry over it. She simply saw it. Every day. Grief for her had stopped being a storm. It had become weather, something you dress for, something you feel without needing to fight. Once, her granddaughter asked, "Why don't you get rid of that old photo? You have better ones on your phone." Miriam just smiled. That one isn't for looking. It's for remembering. Her husband had died in his sleep. No warnings, no pain, just silence. She found him in the morning, hands still curled as if holding a dream. She didn't scream, didn't collapse. She sat beside him, held his hand and whispered, "Thank you." People told her to be strong. She didn't try. She simply continued. At the temple nearby, the monks would speak of impermanence, of how everything changes, how attachment creates suffering. Miriam understood this. Not as an idea, but as a reality. She loved her husband deeply, but she did not clutch him. Even in his absence, she let him be gone. And in doing so, he never truly left. There's a Zen teaching. To hold a butterfly, you must open your palm. Miriam didn't keep a shrine. didn't tell his story over and over. She just lived in a way that would make him proud. She tended the garden they once planted together. She drank the coffee he used to brew. She folded his shirts one last time and gave them away. Not because she stopped loving him, but because she didn't want her love to become a cage. One day, a neighbor lost her husband. She came to Miriam, eyes red, voice shaking. "I don't know how to live without him." Miriam poured tea, sat with her, said nothing at first, then quietly offered, "You don't live without him. You live with the part of him that still breathes in you." The neighbor sobbed. And Miriam did not stop her. She just placed a hand on hers and let it be. Love doesn't end. It changes shape. And grief, too, is a form of love. One that knows how to bow. Miriam is older now, hands soft with age. Memories flickering at the edges, but she still opens the curtains each morning. Still lets the light find the photo, not to bring him back, but to let him go again, gently, lovingly, without holding. The temple's library held thousands of texts, worn scrolls, faded sutras, ink-smudged commentaries written by hands long returned to dust. Monks came to read by daylight when the sun filtered through paper screens, and the scent of old parchment warmed the air. But one monk always came at night. Her name was May. She was quiet, thoughtful, the kind who listened longer than she spoke. Each evening, after her chores were done, she would carry a single candle into the library and read until wax melted low. One night during the rainy season, the wind howled across the hillside. Storm clouds swallowed the moon. Still, May entered the library, lit her candle, sat cross-legged before a scroll on emptiness. The flame flickered with every gust, but she kept reading. Outside, an owl perched in the eaves, white-feathered, wide-eyed. Still, it watched her, unblinking. As the wind swirled harder, the flame bent. Then, it went out. Darkness, total. May did not panic. She closed her eyes and waited. After a moment, she noticed a soft rustling overhead, feathers, then stillness again. She opened her eyes, and though she could see nothing, she sensed the owl was still there. Watching, she whispered aloud, "How do you see in this?" As if in answer, a line from the sutra she had just read returned to her. "The eye that sees true is not of flesh or flame, but of calm presence in the dark." She smiled softly. Perhaps the lesson wasn't in the candlelight, but in its absence. The next day, she spoke with the abbot. "Master," she asked, "why do we fear the dark so much?" He thought for a while. "Because we trust only what the eye can see. But true wisdom," he said, "often waits in the dark." He continued, "The owl does not light a lantern. It simply sees." From that night on, May still brought her candle, but she also learned to sit after it burned out, not to read, but to observe her breath, her thoughts, her discomfort. And slowly the dark became a teacher. Other monks noticed. May was calmer, slower to speak, gentler when correcting mistakes, as if she no longer needed light to know what mattered. One night, a novice joined her. He fidgeted, grumbled at the dark. "I can't see anything," he said. May smiled. "That's the beginning," she said, "not the problem." There's a Zen saying, "Don't curse the dark, don't worship the light, become the eye that sees in both." The owl never flew down, never made a sound, but its lesson stayed with May until the end of her days. Sometimes, the truest clarity isn't found by shining more light, but by learning to sit still when the candle goes out. The sun rose slowly over the wide green fields, brushing the tops of the grass with gold. Mist drifted over the earth like breath from a dreaming world. And in a quiet corner of the meadow, where the stalks grew thick and the wind passed gently, lived a flock of quail. They were small birds, light-boned and quick, their feathers dappled like earth and sunlight. They lived simply, eating seeds, singing softly, and moving together like a single thought. And among them was one who saw more than the others, who watched not only the sky and the grass, but the patterns within them. He was the Buddha in a past life, and though he had no title or special perch, the others came to trust him, because he noticed what they missed, and he saw what was coming. Each day, the flock flew out into the fields to feed. Each day they returned, wings beating as one, hearts light. But one morning, as the sun rose pale behind thin clouds, the wise quail called the others close. "There is danger coming," he said. The flock stilled. "A fowler is near. He lays traps in the tall grass. If we are not careful, we will be taken." Some of the younger birds flapped their wings in alarm. "Should we stop flying?" asked one. "No," said the wise quail, "but we must act together." He showed them a plan. "If one is caught in the net," he said, "do not panic. Each of us must place our beaks beneath the net. At the same moment, we will lift and fly." "To freedom?" a small chick asked. He nodded. "Yes, together." The flock agreed, and the very next day, the net came. It was hidden beneath the dew-wet grass. A few birds landed without seeing it. With a sudden pull, the fowler sprang the trap. Wings fluttered, cries rang out, but the wise quail shouted, "Now!" as we practiced. The others rushed in, beaks down, wings strong, and together they rose, the net lifted with them, light as silk on the wind. And just beyond the trees, they dropped it, free once more. The fowler, watching from behind a tree, blinked. "Strange," he muttered. "I've never seen birds do that." He returned the next day, and again the next. Each time the net was lifted. Each time the birds escaped. He grew frustrated. "Clever little things," he muttered. "But they won't always be united." And he was right, because fear does not break the flock, but ego can. One morning, two young quail quarreled. "You always land too close," snapped one. "You always peck too fast," the other retorted. Their voices rose. The others turned away, uncomfortable. The wise quail approached them gently. "Remember," he said, "the net does not care who is right, only who is divided." But pride had taken root. The quarrel continued. And the next day, when the net fell again, something changed. The two angry quail were caught. The others flew in, ready to help. "Lift with us," they called. But the two snapped at each other. "You grab that side!" "No, you're too slow." Their beaks tangled, their wings struck each other, and in the confusion, the net stayed down. The fowler emerged from the trees, and that day, not all escaped. The survivors gathered in silence beneath a low fig tree. Even the wind was still. The wise quail spoke, not in anger, but with sorrow. Together we can lift what traps us, but alone, even a feather becomes too heavy. In time, the flock mended. The young quail apologized, and the net, though dangerous, was never as strong as their unity. The fowler eventually gave up and moved on, and the wise quail remained, never seeking attention, never blaming, but always watching, always reminding them it is not the trap that captures us. It is forgetting that we are stronger together. In quiet monasteries, monks would later chant this story beneath swaying trees. They would bow not to the birds, but to the truth they carried. That unity is not just comfort, it is survival. Because in this world, nets will fall. But if we move with one breath, with one purpose, with one heart, even the strongest snare cannot hold us. With each breath, we continue our journey through the wisdom of Zen, where the smallest stone may hold the greatest truth. Here starts the next story. There was a spider who spun her web in the rafters of the meditation hall. No one noticed her at first. She was small, thin-legged, her thread finer than the morning mist. But slowly as the days passed, her web grew, spanning beam to beam. A fragile bridge suspended in stillness. A young monk sweeping the floors one morning looked up. He paused. Something about the web held him. It glimmered faintly in the dawn light, each thread stretching toward another as if in quiet conversation. He brought his discovery to the abbot. "Should I remove it?" he asked. "It doesn't belong in the hall." The abbot looked up, tilted his head, smiled. "She belongs exactly where she is," he said, "and perhaps she's teaching more than we are." From that day forward, the monks left the web untouched. They meditated beneath it, bowed in its presence, watched as dew sometimes gathered along its strands, like pearls of stillness. One day, the young monk saw a tiny gnat caught in the web. He felt a pang of sorrow, moved closer, but before he could act, the spider emerged, wrapped the insect, and retreated. He asked the abbot again, "How can something so beautiful cause harm?" The abbot nodded slowly. "A web is not cruel," he said. "It is simply a truth." He continued, "Connection is not always comfort, but everything touches everything else." He gestured around the hall. "You see walls, mats, windows, candles, but they are not separate." He pointed up. "That spider reminds us. One thread trembles, and the whole web feels it." The monk began to notice more. How a sharp word at breakfast changed the tone of the morning. How a kind gesture rippled through the day. How his own thoughts, when tangled, echoed outward into others. One evening during Zazen, a gust of wind slipped through the shutters. The spider's web quivered, and every monk in the room turned slightly. Not toward the wind, but toward the movement of the web, as if they all felt it at once. There is a teaching in the Avatamsaka Sutra. In the realm of Indra's net, each jewel reflects all others. To touch one is to touch the whole. The spider did not preach. She simply spun, her work invisible until noticed, and then unforgettable. Months later, the web collapsed in a storm. Gone, no trace. But the young monk no longer looked for it above. He had begun to see the web everywhere, in the way the cook's ladle touched the soup pot, in the way the bell echoed down the hallway, in the way a smile from a stranger reached deep into his chest. Everything, connected, everything, touching, nothing, alone. A novice had a restless mind. He tried to sit, tried to breathe, tried to still the thoughts, but each time he closed his eyes, his mind swirled. Lists, regrets, what ifs, what nexts. He couldn't find peace, and the more he tried to force stillness, the louder everything seemed to become. One morning, after failing again to meditate, he stood up in frustration. "I'm broken," he muttered. And he walked, head down, steps fast, until he nearly collided with the old groundskeeper, Master Rio. Rio was known for his silence. He didn't teach. He didn't lecture. He just tended the gardens and cleaned the gutters. But he had been at the temple longer than anyone. The novice bowed clumsily. "Forgive me, Master." Rio tilted his head, studying him. "You're not breathing like a monk," he said. The novice looked up, startled. Rio turned, motioning for him to follow. They walked in silence through the bamboo grove to the kitchen courtyard, where a wide clay bowl stood filled with clear water. "Sit," Rio said. The novice sat. Rio picked up a small stick, and without a word, he stirred the water, gently at first, then faster, until the surface churned and the reflection broke into chaos. The novice watched. Then Rio set the stick down. They sat in silence. The bowl shimmered, then slowed, then stilled. The novice could suddenly see his own face again in the reflection. Rio looked at him and asked, "Did I make the water still?" The novice blinked. "Number it settled by itself." Rio nodded. "So will your mind." And he walked away. This is the story of trusting the stillness beneath disturbance. Commentary. Many people believe meditation is about forcing silence, forcing peace, erasing all thought. But in truth, it is about letting the water settle. Your mind is like a bowl of clear water. Every thought, every worry, every fear is like a stick stirring it. The more you react, the more you stir. The more you chase silence, the more turbulence you create. But if you sit and breathe and wait without judgment, the water begins to settle on its own. This is the natural wisdom of the mind. You don't need to fix it. You need to allow it. There's a Zen saying, "Muddy water clears itself if left alone." The novice learned something that day, not from a sutra, not from a formal teaching, but from water. He stopped fighting his thoughts. Instead, he watched them. Like leaves drifting across a pond. He stopped demanding they leave, and instead bowed as they passed. And slowly, something began to shift, not instantly, but gently, like the bowl that stopped churning the moment no hand stirred it. This is how peace comes. Not by control, not by perfection, but by patience, by the quiet knowing that nothing stirred stays stirred forever. If you are anxious, sit like the bowl. If you are overwhelmed, breathe like the wind that forgets itself. If you are angry, wait like the pond after rain. It will pass, all of it. And when it does, clarity returns. You'll see your reflection again. Not because you forced it, but because you didn't run. So next time you feel lost in thought, don't fix, don't flee, just wait. And let the water be water. There was once a garden behind a monastery. Not grand, not famous, just a quiet patch of earth behind the northern wall. Monks took turns tending it, pulling weeds, watering rows of vegetables, scattering herbs for bees. But there was one monk, young and full of questions, who never understood the point. His name was Anyo. He had come to the monastery seeking answers about karma, rebirth, and enlightenment, and all he seemed to be doing was weeding cabbages. One morning, he sat in the dirt beside the old gardener, Master Banzan, and asked, "Why am I here? I came to learn the truth of existence, not harvest radishes." Banzan didn't look up. He plucked a small stone from the soil and said, "Tell me, Anyo, do you know what kind of seed this is?" Anyo shook his head. Banzan smiled. "Neither do I, but we'll find out in time." Later that week, the master handed Anyo a pouch of seeds. "Plant these," he said, "just one each day." So Anyo did. One on Monday, one on Tuesday, one on Wednesday. By the second week, he asked, "What are they?" Banzan only replied, "Keep planting." Weeks passed. Shoots emerged. Some were thin and green, some strong and red-veined, some curled into spirals, others drooped under their own weight. Anyo began to notice which plants needed more water, which thrived in shade, which invited birds. He stopped asking what they were and started tending them for what they needed. By midsummer, the garden had transformed, not because of what Anyo had planted, but because of how he had planted. This is the story of karma as intention, how what we plant becomes our world. Commentary. We often think of karma as a great book in the sky, that someone somewhere is keeping score. But karma is not accounting, it's gardening. Every thought, word, and action is a seed. Some bloom quickly, some take years, some seem to disappear, only to sprout when the rains return. Anyo wanted to learn about karma, but he expected a scroll, a sermon, or a secret. Instead, he got a pouch of seeds. Because karma isn't something you learn, it's something you live. You discover it with every gesture, every tone in your voice, every time you choose to act with care or without it. Some people say, "But I didn't mean to hurt anyone." But even unintentional seeds grow. A sharp word, a careless gesture, a forgotten promise. Each one goes into the soil of the world. But so do quiet kindnesses. A bowl of warm rice, a door held open, a moment of patience with someone slower than you. These bloom too, even when you never see them again. Banzan once said to Anyo, "Don't ask what the seed will become. Ask what the soil needs today." That is the heart of intention. Not just what you do, but why. Karma begins not with action, but with intention. Even the Buddha said, It is volition, monks, that I call karma. For having willed, one acts by body, speech, and mind. Years later, Anyo became a teacher. He no longer spoke of karma as fate. He taught his students how to garden their lives, how to pause before speaking, how to breathe before judging, how to water what they wish to grow, inside themselves and others. One student once asked him, "What is the best seed to plant?" Anyo smiled and said, "Attention to this moment and how you meet it." So the next time you move through your day, ask yourself, what am I planting and where? Because every moment is soil, and your attention is the seed. The path of Zen unfolds like morning mist, soft and patient. In this next tale, we are invited to see, beyond appearance, into essence. Listen carefully to the next story. He was the oldest monk in the monastery. No one quite remembered when he had arrived. He had been there before the abbot, before the bell tower was built, before the bamboo grove behind the kitchen had taken root. They called him Elder Wen. His robe was patched at the sleeves, his back curved like a bowed reed, and his eyes were always smiling, like he had seen something long ago and never forgotten it. He didn't teach, not formally, but every morning he lit the incense before dawn. Every afternoon he watered the moss around the garden stones, and in the evening he swept the meditation hall in silence, the broom moving in time with his breath. You could walk past him and miss him entirely, unless you were paying attention. Then you would feel it, that quiet radiance, like sitting near a warm lamp on a winter night. One spring, Elder Wen stopped coming to morning service. He didn't light the incense, didn't sweep, didn't bow. He stayed in his small corner room beside the main hall, lying on his straw mat with hands folded gently over his chest. He was dying. The news spread quickly. Monks whispered in the corridors. Some feared, some mourned. Some tried to distract themselves with chores. But one by one, they made their way to his room. To say goodbye, to ask for wisdom, to seek some final teaching. But Elder Wen said almost nothing. He just smiled. That same soft smile, unmoved by sorrow, unafraid of what came next. One young monk sat at his side and finally asked, "Master, are you not afraid?" Elder Wen opened his eyes. "Afraid of what?" he whispered. "Of leaving." The old monk chuckled softly, a sound like wind through dry leaves. "Leave where?" He looked around his humble room. "There is nowhere to go." Another monk asked, "What is your final instruction?" Elder Wen blinked slowly, then raised one trembling hand and pointed to the teacup beside his bed. It was half full. The tea had long gone cold, but the sunlight touched it just so, glinting off the rim. He smiled again, then closed his eyes, and that evening he passed. As gently as a flame curling into smoke. No struggle, no fanfare, just a long exhale and stillness. The monks held a memorial. They chanted sutras. They carried his body wrapped in white cloth to the forest. But what they remembered most was not the ceremony. It was the smile. This is the story of death without fear. The final bow of a life lived in awareness. Commentary. In the West, We prepare for death with wills, hospitals, and quiet dread. We pretend it is far away, or we avoid it entirely. But in Zen, death is not the enemy, it is the mirror that shows you whether you were truly alive. Elder Wen was not afraid because he had already practiced dying. Every time he let go of a grudge, every time he stepped aside for someone younger, every time he bowed in silence, releasing his self-importance. The teacup was his final teaching, so ordinary, so overlooked. But it held the whole Dharma. A cup is useful because it is empty. It can hold, receive, release. But if you cling to the cup itself, you miss the tea. If you fear the cup breaking, you never enjoy what it holds. Elder Wen was ready to leave because he had drunk deeply of life. He had tasted the tea, and he didn't cling to the cup. There's a Zen saying, "Let death come like a welcome guest." That doesn't mean we rush toward it. It means we don't turn our back on it. We live with it, like a quiet friend who reminds us not to waste time. Elder Wen's room is empty now, but the moss he watered still thrives. The broom still leans against the wall. The teacup still rests on the low table, cleaned and dry. And his smile lives in the memory of every monk who sat beside him and realized, stillness is not defeat. Stillness is trust. You do not need to fear the end. You only need to live in such a way that when it comes, you can greet it with a breath and a smile. In the garden behind the old temple, there stood a stone Buddha. He had no golden crown, no ornate altar, no flowers at his feet, just stone dash, weathered by rain, wind, and decades of silence. Moss gathered at the base, vines crept along his arm, birds landed on his head without reverence. And still he sat, eyes closed, hands folded, unmoved. Generations of monks came and went. Some swept the garden path, others meditated nearby, but few paid the Buddha much mind. Time had dulled his features. No one prayed to him. Tourists ignored him for the bright lacquered statues inside the main hall. He was just there, part of the background. Then one day a child arrived. She was the daughter of a villager who came to deliver vegetables. While her father spoke to the cook, the girl wandered through the herb garden, past the bell tower, until she saw the statue. Something about it made her stop. Maybe it was the silence, maybe it was the stillness, or maybe it was the dust. She reached out and touched the cheek of the statue. It felt cold, rough, real. "Who is this?" she asked when her father returned. The cook chuckled. "Just an old Buddha. No one important." But the abbot, who had been nearby, turned and smiled. "No one important?" he said softly. "Then perhaps he is teaching more than we realize." The next day, the girl returned with a cloth. She wiped the statue's face gently. The dust didn't all come off. Some of it was too stubborn, too deep. Still, she came again the next day, and the next. She brought water, polished one ear, cleaned the fold of the robe. Not to make it shine, but to see what was underneath. Each day, the Buddha seemed to return a little more, not just to sight, but to presence. Soon, other villagers took notice. A few offered flowers, One man brought a small bowl of rice. The monks watched, a bit puzzled. "This statue has always been here," said one. "Why now?" The abbot simply nodded toward the girl. "Because someone remembered him." That evening, during the Dharma talk, the abbot told a story. "Long ago," he began, "there was a temple in Thailand that housed a clay Buddha. Plain, ordinary, but during renovations a crack formed, and when monks investigated, they found gold beneath the clay." He paused. For years no one knew. Dust had hidden what was always shining. The monks were quiet. They knew he wasn't just talking about statues. "We forget," the abbot continued, "that beneath the dust of routine, of failure, of labels and years, there is gold." The girl didn't understand the full teaching, but she understood enough that something once ignored could be sacred, that what others pass by might be worth sitting with. Months passed. The Buddha still wore dust, but now it was brushed gently, not erased, just respected. His cracks weren't patched, his moss not scraped away, because the lesson was not perfection. It was presence. Years later, the girl grew older, left for school, moved to the city. But every time she returned home, she visited the statue, bowed, closed her eyes, and sat. One spring, she returned to find a small plaque had been placed beside the Buddha. It read, "Covered in dust, still whole." And beneath it, a haiku, "Stone does not forget, even as moss takes its hold." The silence remains. In the end, the statue never moved, never spoke, never sparkled, but it changed those who looked long enough, not by demanding attention, but by waiting patiently for someone to remember that beneath the dust, nothing was ever missing. The gates of Kapilavastu had not changed. They still stood tall and carved with symbols of victory, still flanked by soldiers in polished armor, still framed by the scent of sandalwood and rose water poured in offering. But the man walking toward them now was not the same prince who once slipped away into the dark, his silks folded neatly beside a sleeping child. He wore no crown, no jewelry, only the ochre robes of a wandering monk, faded by sun and softened by dust. His feet were bare, his hands folded around a simple begging bowl. And though the guards stiffened at the sight of him, there was something in his stillness, his presence, that made them hesitate. "Is that?" one whispered. But the other could not answer, for it had been nearly 7 years since Prince Siddhartha vanished into the forest. 7 years since the kingdom was draped in grief and silence, since King Suddhodana walked the palace gardens alone, since Yasodhara raised their son Rahula beneath the weight of unanswered questions. Now the prince had returned, but not as a prince, not even as a man of the world. He returned as the Buddha, the awakened one. The message reached the palace like a whisper carried on wind. He has returned. In the great hall, King Suddhodana stood without speaking for a long time. Then, with deliberate steps, he left his throne. No guards followed him, no procession was summoned. He walked alone down the long stone corridor, past the memories carved into every wall. He found Siddhartha standing beneath the Bodhi tree that had been planted in the garden long ago. It was not the Bodhi tree, but it cast the same kind of peace, broad shade, dappled light, and the hush of old leaves. Father and son faced each other, one with hair white as ash and eyes heavy with time, the other with a shaven head and a face so calm it made the air feel still. "You left without a word," the king said at last, his voice steady but thick. "I had no words," the Buddha replied, "only the question. And now you return with answers. I return with understanding. Not to rule, but to teach. Not to reclaim, but to share." The king looked at him long and deeply, as if trying to trace the child he once cradled, the young man who rode out in golden chariots, the son who vanished like a dream before dawn. At last, the king nodded. "Then let your mother see you, and let the boy." Yasodhara did not run to meet him. She did not cry. She did not fall to her knees. She stood in the doorway of the inner chamber, her sari plain, her hair pulled back, her face worn not with age, but with waiting. "I knew," she said quietly, "I knew you had not died." The Buddha lowered his gaze. "I died to what I was," he said, "so that I could be born to what is." "And us?" she asked. "What are we now?" He stepped closer but did not reach out. The rules of a renunciant were clear. No touch, no home, no possession, and yet his eyes held something that made her breath catch. An ache, a reverence, a peace deeper than comfort. "I carry you with me," he said, "not in desire, but in truth. In knowing that even love must be freed from clinging to shine in full." Behind her, a boy's voice echoed through the hall. "Mother, who is it?" Rahula stepped into the light. He was 7, just tall enough to look up with question, just old enough to sense what was unspoken. His eyes, so like his father's, widened as he saw the man in robes. He looked at his mother, then back at the man. "Is this?" Yasodhara nodded slowly. "This is your father." The boy approached carefully, drawn not by familiarity, but by gravity. The Buddha knelt, bringing his eyes level with the child's. Rahula looked at the robes, at the bowl, at the bare feet, dusty and calloused. "You are a king," the boy said. "I was," the Buddha replied, "but everyone says you will always be a king." "I have chosen another path." "Why?" The Buddha did not speak right away. Instead, he looked at Rahula, not with the eyes of a father returning, but with the gaze of one who sees the seeds of suffering in even the smallest questions. "To be a king is to protect borders," he said. "But the greatest kingdom is not land, it is the mind. I left to master that realm, and to help others do the same." Rahula stared at him, then reached out, tentatively, silently, and touched the bowl in his father's hands. "Are you hungry?" "I eat only what is given freely." The boy blinked. "I'll give." The next morning, as sunlight touched the eastern gate, the people of Kapilavastu gathered in the streets. They had heard. They had whispered. Some had doubted. Others had hoped. Now they saw. The Buddha walked barefoot through the city with his disciples behind him, his bowl held gently, his eyes neither lifted in pride nor lowered in shame, just present. And beside him, a small boy walked, his steps careful, his face solemn. "Who is that?" people whispered. "That is his son," someone said. "That is Rahula." When the procession reached the palace gates again, Rahula turned to his mother. "I want to go with him," he said. Yasodhara's heart trembled. "You are still young," she whispered. "You have not seen the world." "But I have seen him," Rahula said, "and he is the world." She knelt and held his face in her hands, kissed his forehead, and let him go, not out of abandonment, but out of trust. Rahula turned to his father. "Teach me." That night, under a canopy of stars, the Buddha gave his son the precepts. A child novice, a seeker born not of blood, but of choice. He named him Rahula, not in casual use, but in truth. Fetter, for that is what the boy had been once, a golden chain pulling at his heart. But now the chain had turned to light. Not attachment, but connection. Not weight, but legacy. The Buddha looked at his son as he slept beside the fire, curled in a robe too big, holding a wooden begging bowl like a treasure. And for a moment, the silence was not empty. It was full. Years later, Rahula would become a monk in full, respected for his insight and restraint. He would ask deep questions and receive answers not as a prince's son, but as a seeker in his own right. But none would forget that first night. When the Buddha returned, not with chariots, but with calm, not to rule, but to gaze into his son's eyes, and say, without speaking, "I left so you would not inherit illusion. I returned so you could choose the truth." And in that silent gaze was everything a father could offer and everything a seeker could need. In the hush of understanding, Zen offers us another glimpse of what it means to recognize worth not by weight or shine, but by presence. Here starts the next story. The scholar arrived at the mountain temple with a scroll under one arm and confidence in his step. He had studied the texts. He had debated sutras with masters across the provinces. He had published writings on logic and perception, emptiness and form. And now, at last, he wished to learn Zen. He was met by the abbot, an old man with tired eyes and steady hands. They sat on floor cushions beneath a wooden beam. The room smelled of old cedar and rain-damp stone. Outside, the wind stirred the pine needles. The abbot said nothing. The scholar bowed. "I have come to learn the true meaning of Zen." The abbot smiled and reached for the teapot. He poured and kept pouring. The cup filled, then overflowed. The tea spilled onto the tray, then the floor, pooling around the scholar's sleeve. "Master!" the scholar cried, pulling back. "The cup is full! No more will go in!" The abbot paused, then looked up, expression unchanged. "Exactly," he said. "If your cup is already full, how can I show you Zen?" That was the lesson. No parable, no verse, no philosophy, just tea and the quiet sound of too much. In Zen, this story is often the first told, because so many who come to the practice do so with answers already in hand. Certainties, systems, names for things that have no names. But Zen is not a path of addition. It is a path of subtraction, not filling up, but emptying out, so that what cannot be spoken can finally be seen. Later that evening, the scholar sat alone in the courtyard. The wind had shifted. The trees swayed like old dancers in the dark. He touched the wet sleeve of his robe, still stained from the spilled tea. He thought of how much effort he had made, Years of memorizing, comparing, analyzing. And now, a cup of tea had undone him. The next morning, he returned to the abbot. He bowed deeper this time. "I will begin again," he said, "but this time I will begin with an empty cup." The abbot simply nodded and poured. In the West, we're taught to value accumulation, of knowledge, of opinions, of success. We believe wisdom is something gained, a kind of mental wealth, stacked neatly in rows. But in Zen, true seeing begins only when the shelves collapse, when we stop trying to name the wind and instead feel it on our skin. The story of the teacup is not just about humility, it's about presence, because most of us don't realize how full we are, not with wisdom, but with noise. Thoughts, fears, comparisons, labels for ourselves, judgments of others. Memories clinging like moss to the walls of the mind. And into that already crowded room, we try to invite truth. But truth is shy. It doesn't enter noise. It waits for silence. Once, a monk asked his teacher, "What is the essence of Zen?" The teacher picked up a broom and began sweeping, not as metaphor, but as truth. The monk blinked. "I meant the true essence." The teacher stopped, held up the broom, and said, "When your cup is empty enough to see this, then you'll know." The scholar stayed at the temple. He chopped wood, carried water, swept the garden path. He stopped trying to explain Zen and began living it. When thoughts rose, he bowed to them like old friends. When the wind blew, he listened. He stopped speaking about emptiness in essays and began to taste it in his bones. One afternoon, while washing bowls, another visitor arrived, a young academic from the capital, eager, brilliant, hungry for answers. He asked the abbot, "Master, what is Zen?" The abbot reached for the teapot. The scholar, now older and humbler, smiled gently and whispered under his breath, "Careful, your cup is already full." Commentary. We often think that wisdom means knowing more. But in Zen, wisdom is the art of unknowing, not ignorance, but freedom from the clutter of should and must, from the heavy robes of "I already know." To be empty is not to be void, it is to be receptive, to hold space for what arises, without grabbing it, without turning it into a theory. A teacup holds tea because it is empty. A mind holds peace because it is still. You cannot pour into what is already overflowing. You cannot meet truth if you are busy rehearsing your opinions. Zen is not an addition to your bookshelf. It is the moment you set the bookshelf on fire and warm your hands by the flames. There is a cup in all of us. Sometimes it's filled with pride, sometimes with fear, sometimes with knowledge we mistake for awakening. But when you're ready, when you truly long for clarity, you will tip that cup, let it spill, and then, and only then, will the tea of the present moment finally be poured. The full moon rose slowly over the temple pond. Its pale light spilled across the stone paths, kissed the tips of bamboo leaves, and finally rested on the water surface. Perfect, round, and still. A quiet hush fell over the garden. Even the crickets seemed to pause. It was as if the world had stopped breathing, just long enough to notice the moon. But what the monks gathered around the pond saw was not the real moon. It was only a reflection. A novice named Kaoru sat cross-legged near the water's edge. She had come to meditate, but found herself staring at the luminous circle. It shimmered with every ripple. It danced when the breeze blew. It fractured into 1,000 pieces when a frog leapt across. And yet, when the pond stilled again, there it was, whole, unmoved, unaffected. The head monk, Master Renji, approached quietly. He sat beside her without a word. For a while they both watched. Finally, Kaoru whispered, "It looks so real." Renji nodded. "It does." She tilted her head. "But it's not. It's just light." Renji smiled. "Is your reflection in the mirror not you?" Kaoru hesitated. "I don't know. It looks like me, but it's not me." "Then what is it?" he asked. "A copy," she guessed. Renji turned to her. "And what is your idea of yourself?" She blinked. "A reflection." Renji picked up a small stone. He held it above the pond, then let it fall. Plop! The moon shattered again. 1,000 tiny moons danced outward on the ripples. "Does the moon mind?" he asked. Kaoru laughed softly. "No." "Does the moon change?" "No," she said again. Renji looked at her gently. "Then let your mind be the sky, not the water. The moon is always whole, whether you see it clearly or not." That night, Kaoru wrote in her journal, "I chase shadows. I polish reflections. I mistake the moon in the water for the truth." The next morning, during temple chores, Kaoru knocked over a bowl. It shattered. Clay and rice spilled across the floor. She gasped. But instead of panic, she remembered the moon. A fellow novice scolded her. She bowed, cleaned the mess. Inside, she felt no shame. Only the quiet smile of someone who had seen a truth. Weeks later, a guest philosopher visited the temple. He asked the monks, "What is real?" Some spoke of emptiness, others of causes and conditions. One offered the Heart Sutra. But when the question came to Kaoru, she said, "The moon and the water." She explained, "The moon is reality. The water is our mind. When our mind is still, reality reflects clearly. When disturbed, the image breaks, but not the truth." The philosopher nodded slowly. "That is poetic, but how do you know it's true?" Kaoru looked up. "Because when I stop chasing the reflection, I feel the light on my face." That night, Master Renji shared a final koan with the gathered monks. A monk asked, "Master, what is enlightenment?" The master pointed to the moon in the sky. Then he pointed to the moon in the water. Then he smiled. No answer, no explanation, just two moons. And the silence between them. There is a saying in Zen, "Do not mistake the finger pointing to the moon for the moon itself." And so the teachings end where they began, with a reflection, a still pond, a moon that never moved, and a student who finally stopped looking for herself in the ripples. In the heart of the city of Vaishali, not far from the clamour of markets and the perfume of jasmine, there lived a man unlike any other. He was wealthy, yes. His robes dyed in saffron and silk. His estate wide as a lake. He was respected, known to governors and scholars alike. He was a householder, a father, a merchant. But more than that, he was awake. His name was Vimalakirti. Unlike the monks, he did not wear simple robes. Unlike the ascetics, he did not live in the forest. He lived in the world, but not of it. He walked through noise with the silent mind. He moved through illusion without being caught. And so his teachings were sharper than sermons, his presence more disruptive than thunder. One day, it was said that Vimalakirti had fallen ill, not from weakness, but from compassion. He had taken on the sickness of the world so others might awaken. Word reached the Buddha and his disciples, so the Buddha asked, "Who will go and visit the ailing Vimalakirti?" One by one, the great disciples declined. Shariputra, Maudgalyayana, Ananda. Each said, "Master, I cannot. I have debated Vimalakirti before, and I was humbled." Because this layman, this non-monk, non-official, had a clarity that even the great arhats could not match. His words undid your logic. His questions pierced through pride. He was kind, but unshakably sharp. At last the Buddha turned to Manjushri, the bodhisattva of wisdom, and Manjushri, without hesitation, said, "I will go." So Manjushri entered the city, accompanied by heavenly beings, monks and devas. He found Vimalakirti reclining on a simple bed beneath a flowering tree. His eyes were calm, his illness invisible, his presence unmistakable. Manjushri bowed. "Venerable one," he said, "how should a bodhisattva view the world?" A simple question. And Vimalakirti answered not with poetry, but with paradox. A bodhisattva views the world as a magician views an illusion, as a dream, as a mirage, as a bubble on water. Manjushri asked again, "What is the root of this illness?" Vimalakirti replied, "The root of my sickness is the sickness of all beings. When they are healed, I will be healed too." And then he began to teach, not with lectures, but with reversals. He said a bodhisattva must live in the world without being trapped by it, must speak without attachment to words, must enter duality in order to transcend it. His home became a Dharma hall, his bed a throne of emptiness. Then came the final deepest question. Manjushri asked, "What is the ultimate teaching of non-duality?" One by one, the assembled bodhisattvas gave answers, each profound, each poetic. They spoke of emptiness, of no birth and no death, of neither here nor there, of neither self nor other. Each spoke in turn, until all had spoken. Then they turned to Vimalakirti and asked, "What is your answer?" Vimalakirti looked at them, smiled and said, "Nothing." He remained completely silent. No gesture, no word, just presence. And in that moment, the hall fell still. Even the wind paused at the edge of the window. And the bodhisattvas understood, because that, his silence, was the answer. Beyond yes and no, beyond concepts, beyond even the word beyond. Only direct knowing, unspoken and complete. Commentary. The Vimalakirti Sutra is not just a scripture, it is a mirror, held up to the part of us that clings to roles, to robes, to rank, to rhetoric. It reminds us, Wisdom is not a matter of appearance, and truth is not always spoken. Vimalakirti was not a monk, but he understood Dharma more deeply than most. He owned property, but was not owned by it. He lived among crowds, but dwelled in emptiness. He used language, but was not trapped by it. And when the time came to speak of non-duality, he let silence do the speaking. Sometimes, silence is escape. But sometimes, it is clarity, not a refusal, but a revelation. A silence so full, it says everything. There's a Zen saying, when the mouth is closed, the Dharma speaks most clearly. This is what Vimalakirti embodied, the wordless transmission, the truth beyond fingers pointing to moons. In our world, we often rush to speak, to fill the space, to define, to prove. But Vimalakirti teaches, when we stop grasping, when we stop arranging words like armor, what remains is presence. The silence was not empty, it was alive. It was not passive, it was the roar of no self. It dismantled even the idea of someone giving an answer, and left only this. You don't have to be a monk to wake up. You don't have to renounce your life. You have to see through it, and then live with depth, with clarity, with compassion, from within the illusion, while no longer fooled by it. Vimalakirti's room is still here. Every moment you stop trying to win the argument. Every time you stop needing to prove you're wise. Every time you rest in the space before thought. You are sitting beside him, and you are silent too. As the lantern of awareness glows a little brighter, we come to a tale about seeing with more than the eyes. Let the stillness guide you now, and listen carefully to the next story.